Good afternoon, everyone. This is a book review of the book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. In this presentation, I'll be going through 3 ideas that I liked, 2 critiques I have about the ideas given, and there will be advice about the ideas scattered throughout the presentation. To start, we'll start with system 1. This system is often described as fast, automatic, and intuitive. It operates effortlessly and quickly, handling simple tasks such as recognizing faces, recognizing simple sentences, reacting to immediate threats. For example, let's say there's someone waving to you across the street. You'll instantly recognize them if they are a friend. And if they're not, you'll be comparing different biases your brain might have. For example, if they are of Asian descent, if they're wearing specific clothing, if they have certain kinds of habits that you can see, you'll immediately judge them based on that, which is from system 1. On the other hand, we have system number 2. This is characterized by a slow, deliberate, analytical approach. This system kicks in whenever we encounter complex problems, such as needing to do a math question, needing to consider how to complete a project, such as the one we got here. Or let's say you're planning a vacation for the holidays. Unlike System 1, System 2 demands a lot more cognitive resources and attention. For example, if you're trying to figure out how to divide a bill among friends, you're engaging in System 2. Now, the reason why this is extremely important is because this gives us excellent insight into human decision-making and allows us to understand and fix behaviors that might be harmful to ourselves. Now, a huge portion of this book is about different problems or different ideas that System 1 comes into contact with. For example, key concepts such as biases, loss aversion, endowment effect, sunk cost fallacy, hindsight bias, attribution theory, halo effect, and much more are influenced by both of these systems. In this presentation, the ideas I will be focusing on are sunk cost fallacy, loss aversion, and the halo effect. For the first idea, we have sunk cost fallacy. It is a cognitive bias where you continue to do something due to previous investment, such as a emotional financial investment or a sense of commitment to something you've done in the past, even when it's probably not the best idea to follow on and continue. Now, Kahneman explains this fallacy is deeply rooted in our cognitive biases, especially our tendency to avoid losses and to justify past actions. We often irrationally cling to our investments because admitting that we wasted them is like admitting to failure. Now, sunk cost fallacy is something that can happen to anyone. It is extremely commonplace. Learning about this made me realize how I have fallen into this trap quite often, especially when it comes to games and different hobbies. If you invest into a hobby, you will want to continue investing even though it feels like you don't really like it anymore. This is an idea of sunk cost fallacy, and you really shouldn't fall into it. One excellent example that sunk cost fallacy is extremely problematic for you would be when you're investing in stocks. If you invest in stocks, you will put a lot of your life savings into it, and say it falls down, you would want to stick to it and have hope and pray it goes back up. Often it doesn't. This is a extremely important thing to understand, how if something like that happens, you most likely should pull out. Moving on, a second idea that Heinemann brought up is loss aversion. Losses are perceived much more significant and impactful than equivalent gains. And it's also extremely dangerous and manipulative way for a way that someone can easily manipulate you. People can threaten you through giving you options, threatening you by saying how if you don't do X thing, you might lose your family, you might lose huge financial issues. Many things can happen with loss aversion. However, we will say that personally, loss aversion can be seen as largely actually positive if you know how to utilize it. This will be further expanded on in the critique section. The halo effect, as explained by Heinemann, well, Kaufman, is something that affects your overall impression of a person, a company, or a product. For example, long-time acquaintances are first impressions of someone, and product design are all areas where the halo effect takes place, affecting our System 1 decision-making process. Meeting someone for the first time, first impressions are extremely important as they almost completely shape how we see a person. This can be good and bad, as the person you're meeting also knows these implications. They could be purposefully showing themselves as a good person to manipulate and trick you. This is something you have to be really aware of for the halo effect, as especially when it comes to family members, where you might be delusioned into thinking that the things they do are correct and good for you when they are just taking advantage of you. The initial bias. The halo effect is very beautiful bad actors trying to gain your favor, as said in the past. As we got, Kahneman also illustrates this in a study that he conducted with college students, where they were given a video about a college professor, and just from this specific video, they had to formulate an opinion of the professor. Clearly, since the short video showed the professor in a very good light, all the students liked him. However, not a single one has been taught by him before. This is entirely due to the halo effect. From here, we can see how the halo effect can very obviously impact how you see something. And you should really take into account additional experiences with anything to formulate a more educated opinion about it. This can also protect you. Now, for our first critique, I have that since this book is largely negative towards a lot of these cognitive biases and different ideas, I propose that loss aversion can be positive. While Kaufman often says that loss aversion will increase the chance of sunk cost fallacy from occurring, such as you've already invested 10,000 into stocks, but you lost all that money due to the stock going down. Now you feel like you can't lose more. You don't want to lose more, so you stay in. Now, from how I see loss aversion, is that you can recognize it through System 2 levels of thinking that staying in would cause more loss than normal, using loss aversion as a defensive mechanism against harmful things. So personally, I believe that loss aversion is more positive than actually negative, as Kaufman has suggested. A second critique of this would be the narrative fallacy that he speaks of, where narrative fallacy refers to the tendency for people to create coherent, often oversimplified stories or explanations to make more complex or chaotic events simpler. Now, he suggests that these downplay the complexities, uncertainties, and randomness involved. However, personally, narrative fallacy is how we are able to quickly make decisions and conclusions based around the context. And through this, we can make quick and sharp decisions when it matters. Now, most scenarios where narrative fallacy can come in only occurs because people don't use System 2 levels of thinking. I believe that often when narrative fallacy occurs, we will have time to utilize System 2 levels of thinking if required. Therefore, I believe that narrative fallacy in most scenarios is a positive for us, actually, due to these things. Overall, I believe it's important to understand and realize that the narrative fallacy exists, so we are aware of it. So we do not use the narrative fallacy in important life decisions, such as ignoring constructing narratives of your own health, ignoring different options such as genetics or random chance. Thank you for listening to this presentation.